for those who are/were in unbalanced relationships, where you took on most of the mental load/domestic work. Were there signs when you were dating or early on in the relationship? My friend didn't see it in her husband, but I did, and regularly questioned if she was okay with that. The hard part is, when you love someone, you want to do things for them and help make their life easier. But when you do it consistently, you create habit and reliance on that additional labor. People can't learn without the opportunity to fail themselves and figure out what works for them. And she was constantly taking up tasks because it was easier for her to do it than let him. Over time, these tasks were taken on more and more until it felt insurmountable, and her husband was basically useless outside of the specific tasks he wanted to do and had been left with after she had taken on everything else. She finally blew up at him for not taking on more labor, which got his butt in gear about seeing the work she did and started taking on more tasks around the home. But it's still a struggle in their relationship because she expects him to do things to the standards of someone with 10 years of experience, and she has no patience for the fact that he's starting from zero knowledge now. This is something I refuse to get trapped by. Something I look for is being respectful of my home when they are visiting. Do they take their dishes to the sink unprompted? Ask to take my dishes to the sink if I seem done. Wash dishes just because they are there and it needs done. Does their overpass bag look like a bomb went off on my dresser until they leave? Ask where I'd like them to leave their towel if they showered here. Take the trash out just because it looks full during meal prep and I'm preoccupied. Empty the coffee pot filter basket after coffee is done. Learn where I keep common household items, or at least look for them in logical places so I don't have to repeatedly tell them. Not grand gestures. Just those little automatic things that come as muscle memory. If you're a responsible person who is accustomed to taking care of a house and having a functional life, logistically, is their home generally tidy and taken care of? Do they make regular doctor's appointments? Schedule things that are reasonable to schedule instead of flying by the seat of their pants 24/7 trips to visit their parents. Purchasing tickets for things in advance. Making reservations. Not having lapsed car registrations, etc. Are they proactive, and do they take initiative with their family and friends? Not just me. Do they fix things in their own living space in a timely manner, or procrastinate things that can be finished in a few hours at most? Edit. I should note that I've never lived with a partner because most of them fail this passive evaluation, among other relationship incompatibilities. Absolutely. But I was young and the only example I had was a mother who completely carried the mental load, so I thought it was normal. I thought it was normal to have to ask a man to wash dishes, do laundry, clean, etc. Obviously that relationship ended, and I realized that that wasn't what I wanted for myself. When I met my husband, I made it very clear that if I ever had to write a list of jobs for him to do, the only thing that I would be writing is a goodbye letter. Especially after they have had kids. Raising kids dramatically increases the household labor and eats up so much previously free time in a way that I think few people, and maybe especially men, truly understand before they become parents. My experience and observations are that women often struggle a lot to adjust to the new reality, and you can read about those struggles every day in the new parent and mom-centric forums. But they do because they have to. No one else is going to pick up their slack. Whereas it seems that often men don't adjust their expectations to match reality because there is someone picking up the slack, or the man is aware that he's doing more than he did before, and that feels like enough, even if his more is much less than what his partner has taken on. This dynamic can be unspoken, where the woman waits and hopes for her partner to do more while silently seething. Or it can be an open and frequent point of contention between the partners, or anywhere in between. Ultimately, friction will continue to exist if the male partner refuses to acknowledge the workload and accept that he's equally responsible for it, or responsible in whatever proportion achieves an outcome where both partners are getting equivalent time to rest, recharge, engage in hobbies, etc. I think partners should have frank discussions about these matters as early as possible, and particularly about the need to be aligned as a couple on the goal of achieving equivalent free time for both partners. It can be difficult to tally and compare work performed, especially if one person is working more hours outside the home and the other is performing more household labor. It's easier and simpler to consider the amount of true free time each partner gets in a day/week. Too many men are happy to assume that they should have as much slack as their partner will pick up. I'm not suggesting that it's as simple as having these conversations, but I think that not having these conversations makes it all the more likely that an unbalanced workload will naturally seem to crop up, particularly after the arrival of a child. These sound like really small things, but I think they are emblematic of bigger issues. When the toilet paper runs out, does he replace the roll on the handle, or does he just plop an extra roll down on the back of the toilet tank? When the trash bin gets too full, does he try to squash it down, presumably for you to handle at a future time, or does he just take it out then and there? And does he replace the bin liner while he's at it? A guy who replaces the toilet paper roll and hangs it correctly on the handle, and who takes the trash out when it's full without trying to smoosh it down, he's a keeper. Lol. It sounds silly, but I think a guy who notices small details like this is more likely to notice bigger details as well, like crumbs on a counter, dust bunnies under the couch, a pile of clean laundry needing to be put away, the grass being too long and needing a mow, etc. Close bracket. I think a good way to tell is how they handle you being sick. Do they check on you, bring you tea, ask if you need stuff from the store, or do they just go on with their own life until you're better, or worse, complain that now that you're sick you can't come out to party/have sex/do stuff for them? Nope, not a one. What I didn't understand was with his ADHD, he would speed clean right before I would come over. If I had lived with him first, I would have seen the flags. Just saying. Yes, we lived apart and were long distance for a while. I owned my own home and was constantly working on maintaining it. One day he wanted me to celebrate him for fixing a broken light switch, saying that I would be back quote, so proud of him for getting it done. It turned me off knowing I was personally updating all the outlets and switches throughout my own house, and never once did he mention that he was impressed or proud of me. Seemed odd he wanted kudos for something he knew I'd done 10 of in my own home. The second major red flag was when I'd come to visit him and his house/room was just so messy. It showed his lack of initiative and apathy towards house duties, especially when entertaining or having others in the home. I think the worst part is how he'd always say he back quote meant to pick up before I arrived. It showed me he had enough awareness to think about it, but not enough to prioritize or actually get anything done. When my then boyfriend, now husband and baby daddy, and I moved in together, we were mid-20s. Right out of law school, it felt like I was the one making sure all of our chores, groceries, lunch prep, laundry, got done. I guess I could see how, if I had more free time I maybe wouldn't have seen it, but I was a big law associate at the time, so I just did not have time for that. I also felt a little like I was going crazy with the, if you tell me what to do I'll do it. Like that felt like it wasn't solving the problem, but I couldn't figure out why. I finally learned the concept of the mental load, explained it to my now husband. He listened. We decided to create a list of things and divide responsibility. This progressed throughout our relationship to not just assigning roles, but also creating schedules. For instance, I work out and shower while my husband takes care of the morning chores and dog. Then I handle our toddler when he wakes up, and my husband has his turn to work out and shower. I'm so proud of the work we did back then when we were dating, and as we got married, had a kid, and took on more and more responsibly, we've continued to share the mental load. I feel like we really set ourselves up for success. I think even early in a relationship there is shared responsibility. Look at how that responsibility is shared. If it's unequal, it's not going to magically and suddenly get better. I suspect signs are often there, but 1. The responsibility is less, so it's more manageable for one person. And 2. People don't necessarily have the words for what feels wrong, even if they see it. I think a better question would be the opposite. If you have a partner that steps the F up, what were the early signs? Most of my friends in this situation Ignored all the red flags. I blame internalized misogyny. My friends with great partners, myself included, had great partners from the beginning. To quote Batman Begins, "It's not who you are underneath. It's what you do that defines you." One sign for me could have been how doting women in his life were. Mother, sister, aunts. He had clearly been the golden boy growing up. My partner seemed particularly domesticated. Cooked, liked cleaning. Very neat and tidy. Now as a SAHM I have found myself in the situation you described above. The only sign I could pick up on was that he was overly fussy. When I've discussed this with friends, we've found that men tend to be stubborn and do things to their own satisfaction, but just don't seem to consider the needs of the family. My husband is meticulous but slow. A friend's is fast but careless. So even those that can take care of themselves seem to have trouble adapting to living with and looking after others. My husband is meticulous but slow. This describes mine. He will clean everything and take care of a household, but he refuses to speed up and do things less perfectly so that we can fit more in. Even when needed, he will agree to goals I suggest we should work on, but then doesn't follow through unless I take on management and delegation duties. I do think it's a common trend in heterosexual relationships, from what I see on Reddit. I'm in the camp with your friends. My ex-husband and I were married almost 4 years before we had our child, together 5 years total at that point. Mental load, domestic work, etc. were pretty close to 50/50. As our child got older, the unbalance became more prominent, to the point where 95% of it all fell on me. This is just giving me flashbacks to my ex's messy bathroom. I still think about the gunk buildup around the shower. I'm not saying it was the only reason we broke up, but damn, it was high on the list. A lot of people have mentioned checking whether he does housework for himself. I think an even better sign is whether he does housework for you. Since marriage is a partnership, he should demonstrate the ability to be a partner, rather than just self-sufficient. At one point, when I was dating my husband, he noticed I was dealing with a stressful period at work/school and went grocery shopping for me and meal prepped me healthy meals. We didn't live together, but he came over and cooked in my kitchen and then cleaned up after himself afterward. I think that was a good sign because it showed he could see when help was needed and proactively do the helping and do it properly. Another time my dog had an accident and he cleaned the carpet for me. Things like that. I think I always knew I did more than my partner. It was okay because of his mental health issue/work vs mine and his sincere gratitude. I had more spoons, if you have heard that mental health metaphor. What I did not predict was how taxing being a parent would be and how quickly I would be depleted. My husband has several chronic health issues and he just does not have as many spoons as me. But honestly, as the well spouse of an ill person, it's often a difficulty for me because I think, is he really not able to do this, or is he being lazy? Because my husband is quite willing to let me handle things and was never good about keeping a house before we met, and a little sniffle or backache will have him moaning and complaining. Man flu hits him hard. It really is very hard to balance being loving and supportive of my chronically ill husband and enabling him because he's slacking. I'm not in this relationship anymore, but he literally had a room full of garbage. Like a whole room he just threw unsorted s into. I sorted it. Poor, dumb, 19-year-old me. There were definitely signs, but it took me years to put the pieces together. 1. His place wasn't well decorated or well kept, and he was 30. It wasn't disastrous or gross. He did enough to get by, but I moved in, spent a week cleaning the place, started making it a little homier, and then that expectation was on me forever. It wasn't that big a deal when we were in a glorified studio, but 5 years later I was taking care of a 3-bedroom house and the yard alone. 2. The first time we moved, he was away on a work trip until the day of the move itself. He didn't help with packing before he left, didn't declutter/get rid of anything even after I asked, and left me to pack the entire apartment up by myself. I look back, and it's wild he didn't hire anyone to help me. 3. He relied a lot on his older sister for advice and problem solving in every area of life. I'm all for guys being close with their moms and sisters, but I look back and I'm like, oh, yeah. He was very used to the women in his life dropping everything to make his life easier. 4. Not much interest in, or awareness of little things that would make my life easier or more comfortable. I pay a lot of attention now to those courtesies. Do guys offer to pick you up, drive you home, get you an Uber? Do they ask if you're too warm, too cold, tired, still having fun, etc? Do they respect your schedule and time? Or do they try to get you to stay out late when they know you have an early meeting in the morning? It all indicates a level of thoughtfulness and that they are taking your experience into account, not just their own. I was honestly surprised when, after we got married, my ex decided it was my job to make his medical appointments and remind him about going. We were both 30 when we got married, so it wasn't like he'd never lived on his own. But we got married, and suddenly he wasn't capable of anything. He just quit adulting when we got married, like he'd acquired a full-time maid/secretary, a real bait and switch. It was awful. He refused to change, and ultimately leaving him was the only way to get any relief. My partner 100% pulls his weight with domestic responsibilities. We both take turns cooking, cleaning, planning and doing chores, washing, and house maintenance. All the signs that he was a conscientious partner were there at the beginning, because he always treats his environment and people around him with respect. We don't have kids, but I have no doubt that he'd be a supportive partner if we did. In my experience, people do show early on what living with them will be like. Do they clean up after themselves, or leave it to someone else? Do they volunteer for a chore or sit around and hope someone else will pick it up? It helps that he's a pretty liberal-minded guy who rejects prescribed gender roles, which I love about him. So there isn't any of this the woman should cook and clean or the man should be the breadwinner conservative nonsense that I grew up around. Yes, I should have believed his mom when she would get on him about the amount of time he spent gaming and him not doing chores. He made it seem like she was being ridiculous, but she was actually right. Yes, there were signs. But we were in our early 20s when we started dating, and honestly I was playing grown up and wanted to impress him, which is stupid now. I did like cooking more than him, so I would do all the cooking, and it made me happy when he was so impressed by my skill. We were pretty equal with the cleaning and still are. But after kids I'm just home more because maternity leave, so I do feel the cleaning gets put on me more. I still do all the cooking now after 10 years and that's annoying. So yes, everything's starting to slowly get put on me as my job. The emotional labor took me longer to notice that I was the one planning everything for our relationship too. Groceries, presents for family, birthdays, Christmas, finance planning, vacations, family pictures, inviting friends over. That stuff at the end snuck up on me. At first I enjoyed doing that stuff, but after years of no help you start to question what the other person is doing. He avoided calling doctor, asked me to do it. I said no, but I'll coach him. He did it. He insisted he knew how to wipe down a table better than me, even though I was just kindly cleaning his place a bit. It wasn't an assigned chore. He also wasn't interested in cleaning, but all of a sudden, when he's there, mansplaining, expected me to watch him play video games, like his exes and mom did. No, too boring. I have my own life. Had mold growing in his fridge, fruit pull out, and didn't notice, and didn't clean it when I said something. Had mold or mildew in his dish rack due to setting colander to drain pasta. Didn't notice till I pointed it out. Uneducated germaphobe. I couldn't wash my hands in the kitchen sink over dirty dishes because I'd contaminate them with my germs. Like, they'll be washed anyways. Chastised me for not using soap pump with the back of my wrist. Same man who stored fruit in a visibly moldy fruit crisper tray in the fridge. Insisted frozen food was dirty even packaged at home like cooked leftovers into Ziploc. Chastised me. We argued a lot. He changed into this over time, or rather exposed himself. Millimeters, no, not really. I think kids made it worse. After divorcing though, he's really stepped up and is a great single father. And I'm fine with that. Cause my kids deserve two happy parents. even if we are not together. But before marriage and early in the relationship there were maybe a few red flags, that he was narcissistic. But that didn't lead me to believe he wouldn't help out with the mental/domestic load. Just led me to believe he's a bit selfish. One example was he got upset that I didn't have his pills in my purse. I mean, I switch purses and I shouldn't be responsible for his meds, right? Well, he yelled and accused me of not caring about him. I was pretty dumbstruck with that, but that didn't keep him from helping. Generally speaking, when we were living together, I chalked that incident up to some kind of anxiety while we were traveling. But it was definitely a glimpse to an overarching picture of him being incredibly self-absorbed. No, before we had kids things were really equal. That's why I felt safe committing. Maternity leave is where it changed. If you really want an eye-opener on this topic, Bridging the Gap's Facebook group is a fantastic with amazing resources and supportive community. Nope. I always thought he was much cleaner and neater than I was. We always did our own laundry. He'd prep the food, and I'd cook it. I probably cleaned the kitchen more than he did, but he vacuumed and cleaned the shower more than I did. Kids destroyed the balance as I took on everything for them. So he still washed his own clothes, but not the kids' clothes. He knew what to get himself for weekday lunches, but wouldn't think of meals for the kids. He could get himself dressed, but didn't know what the kids should wear. He could do what he wanted, but I'd have to prep and schedule everything, or drag the kids along for something as selfish as grocery shopping. We are still together, and things have changed dramatically over the last few months. He gets the kids' clothes ready and packs their bags in the mornings, makes breakfast, still does most of the vacuuming, cleans the kitchen at night, takes on kids duty overnight, while I sleep in a different room during the week. There was a degree of weaponized incompetence, but he's feeling more confident now, and I'm feeling much more sane. My husband isn't great at noticing when the household work needs done, but we are direct communicators and that makes up for it. I often ask for help, or for him to do something, and he won't complain. When I was working full time he took charge of all food related work and that was amazing. I'm unemployed now, so we are figuring out the balance again. I'm child free because I don't want to manage more, and my husband knows I don't want to manage him either. Yeah, if his place is a mess, that's a sign.